We expect a lot of crowd audience to be much younger than me, and probably younger than you as well. I'm a retired person, but I went back to school after I quit my 35 years in 9 to 5. I went back to learn design and innovation, so I'm in that space. I mentor startups, small businesses, a little bit of corporate as well. So I'm more a consultant and a trainer as well. Well, if you work for IBM for almost 2 decades, they make you a trainer anyway.
Yeah, that's cool. And is this session, are we running this session live? So are people joining us live? Yeah.
Yeah, Narmeen, could you answer that question? Because I think it's live on Facebook.
Yeah, so it is currently live on Facebook, and I'll also be recording it so that we can publish it later on our YouTube channel. Right. So it's both streams.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, so Franziska, a little bit of that. Okay, guys, she spells it with the Z, but I think it's pronounced with the C. Is that correct, Franziska?
Yeah, it's pronounced like, I always say it's like San Francisco, but with an A. In Franziska.
Yeah, I understand. That's the Swiss of Francisco.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a great admiration for your chocolate, by the way, just in case you don't know.
Oh my God, tell me about it. I miss it.
Yeah.
I ran out.
So
finds me are my values. So other than being a rebel and I love to also think that I'm kind and generous and gracious. And then, of course, my values are what define me, which are love. I believe that love is very unconditional, not just romantic love, but love is everything in life. And then trust, and trusting the universe, trusting in myself, and courage, of course, which leads me on all sorts of adventures, and evolution, because evolution for me is what has helped me to continuously grow and grow through challenges, grow through great times also. And then lastly, but probably almost one of the most important ones, is impact. So I believe in doing things that make an impact, like this right now. You are running this session right now, and I'm here with you because I know this will make an impact for someone. And if we can touch one person, if we can inspire one person, then my mission here is accomplished.
Yeah, you're right. If there's a famous saying that says, if you can change the life of one soul, you've served humanity well.
Yes.
That's enough for an impact, if one would like to describe. A lot of people don't think that way. They want to impact 1 million people, which is, you always start with one at least. So tell us about Franziska, the entrepreneur. I mean, I'm totally baffled. I'm impressed, to be more precise, by the fact that you run 5 companies concurrently. How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't run them all myself. I have a team, and also some of them are startups, and some of them are, one of them is a movement, so I wouldn't call it a company. So one of my first businesses I started 11 years ago, co-founded, is Basic Bananas, and Basic Bananas is our largest company, and that's our marketing mentoring business, where we train business owners in how to understand marketing and branding. And how this company came about is I used to work in advertising and marketing and doing strategy. And then I found that a lot of small businesses don't have access to these resources, and it's very expensive for people to work with advertising agencies. So we started a marketing mentoring agency, and that's been going for 11 years. That's probably the one that takes most of my time at the moment. Also with this pandemic, we had to change a lot of it because we used to run a lot of face-to-face in-person mentoring sessions, which we can't do anymore. So I'm very involved in that. Then OceanLovers is a startup, and OceanLovers was born out of the passion for the ocean. I love the ocean. I'm looking at the ocean right now. I spend every morning in the ocean, either surfing or swimming. And so one day, this is about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I was sitting in the ocean surfing, and I just thought I have to do something to raise more awareness for our ocean challenges, such as pollution, noise pollution, but also plastic pollution especially. And I knew that I needed to play by my strengths to do that, and my strengths lie in marketing and branding. So started a business called Ocean. It will be easier than pointing the finger or trying to raise money for a charity. So we started OceanLovers, which is a marketplace that connects conscious people, ocean lovers with products that are sustainable. And then the business hood is our brand consultancy. I know you have quite an interest in that too. We might talk a little bit about it because you are really passionate about branding and design. And that is run by one of my best friends, Julia. She's also a Swazi. And I asked her a few years ago if she used to work in advertising too. And so I said, hey, would you come and run this company? And she's running that business now. So I'm involved mainly in strategy and leadership, but not so much in the day-to-day of that business. And then Moments of Humanity is just a movement at the moment where we're not really working much on that at the moment. It's a movement that we are hoping to spread more to help people share more kindness with each other. And I'm not operational at all in that business.
That's
movement.
great. That's a great, so you're in the social space, you're in the business space, and you're actually getting the best of your experience put into both sides of the fence, right? Now, if you were to start as an entrepreneur without the 9-to-5 that you did with the marketing advertising profession, would it be any different? How much has that professional experience that you had before you started a company of your own, or before you decided to become an entrepreneur, how much of that professional experience helped you take, give you a handicap, for example, a head start to go forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my case, and I know this is not the case for a lot of entrepreneurs, but in my case, my professional work has really, really helped me because I studied marketing and I studied political science. And after university, I was studying in Geneva. I actually wanted to work for the United Nations. I wanted to get into impact work. And then I ended up in Australia because I got a scholarship to come to university here. And I know your daughter is here too, which is really cool. And then I ended up just by chance, I did some contract work and I ended up doing a contract for an advertising agency. And the CEO really liked me. So he just offered me a job. I couldn't refuse. It was too good, the offer. And so I just suddenly ended up in that. I never really planned to work in advertising. I just ended up there by chance, or, the universe, or whatever we want to call it. And that background did really help me especially at Basic Bananas, because it's all about marketing mentoring. So that was my strengths. And then of course, marketing and branding helps you with every business really. So it did help me a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. So because a lot of entrepreneurs who come with startups have just one delinquency, that they don't have much of professional experience. And I guess if you look at the historical track record of startups, people who had professional experience done, they tend to have a little advantage, sometimes a great advantage of going ahead and getting the startup to a growth stage faster than an entrepreneur who doesn't necessarily have any professional background. And that's why,
But then having said that, I agree. And then I think, just so that we can encourage our listeners and viewers, it's also okay if you don't have any background. I think it's okay as long as you seek out help. And that's what people are doing right now, right? They're here to learn. I think even if you have no experience in what you're doing, but as long as you have a great product or a great service, you're fine if you seek help like this here. If you get mentors and you get people to help you.
Let me pick up from there. If somebody's starting fresh and comes to you for advice to say, I've got no background, no experience, like you started with some experience, I've started with a lot of experience. What would you recommend to them? Would you recommend going for investment, chasing customers, or preferably seek a mentor first? Which one? How would you put that in order? If it's a mentor first, or customer first, or VC first?
Yeah, it depends on the type of business, but in most cases, in most businesses, unless you're building, you need a lot of funding for technology, or you're in a space that needs a lot of starting capital, I would definitely not chase VCs in the beginning, because that's a full-time job, and you can bootstrap. I've bootstrapped all of these businesses. And so I would not start with a VC unless you really need the money and you have a brilliant idea that people will want to invest in. I would probably first prove, so I would start with attracting the customer, because I would first prove this concept. So I would build a really good brand and a great product, a great service, and then prove it So you can do the minimal viable product route where you do the basic product or the basic service and then find customers that use it and prove it, get results for them, and then you might invest in yourself in terms of getting a marketing program like the ones that we run, or potentially getting a mentor. But first prove the concept and really invest in providing something good, because businesses that are not providing good product or service, they're so hard to market. You just need to invest in doing something really good and get some customers. Sometimes in the beginning, depending on your business, you can even give your product or service to a few people for free in order for their feedback, get testimonials, get case studies, and that already helps you build up your marketing messaging too.
And if Franziska had a mentor or has a mentor, how did she go about selecting her mentor?
How did I go about
selecting your mentor?
You know what? I'm not the best person to share how to find a mentor, because I have to be completely honest. I have not found a lot of people that I found super duper amazing in terms of mentorship. And that maybe that has to do a little bit with me just being a rebel, and maybe just also my very first mentor, maybe she scarred me a little bit. But I had when I first started Basic Bananas 11 years ago, I had no idea about running a business. I knew about marketing, I knew about branding, but business not so much. So I had a mentor, and the one thing that she told me is, she said, do not call this business Basic Bananas. She said, don't do that. You got to call this business something like Marketing Institute. And I said, no, Sharon, I will call this business Basic Bananas. I do know branding. So already, like, the very first mentor gave me a piece of advice I didn't take, and I'm very glad I didn't take it. And she also had really good advice, of course, too. But you know, I now, how I go about growing and evolving is I read a ton of books. I read so many books, and my aim, and I don't always achieve it, but my aim is to read at least one book a week. And I get a lot of information and knowledge from books, because I can be selective. I can choose what I like to apply. Also, I listen to podcasts, I talk to people. So I probably get more out of that than, I just probably haven't found the right mentor. I'd love to actually have a really good mentor. I just haven't found anyone who can really push me.
That's very interesting. Having grown this far without a mentor is quite an achievement to credit to yourself. I don't know if there's a rebel that does it or is there a renegade that does it, but we'll find out hopefully in the next 25, 30 minutes. Which brings me to the next question is, do you mentor others?
So at Basic Bananas, what we do is, the whole business is based on mentoring. Now, in the very beginning, I was mentoring a lot of businesses through the company. And then as we grew into other cities, we then hired mentors to work with us and to help people. We have all the systems, the frameworks, the marketing templates that we teach our mentors to teach. So I stopped mentoring. So I had a few private clients, but then I didn't have so much time anymore for more people. And now, because of this pandemic, I stepped in a little bit more again, because a lot of businesses are really struggling. So now, yes, so through Basic Bananas, I do mentor quite a lot of businesses in group settings mainly. And then some companies, they also are sometimes requesting one-on-one, which I don't do a lot of because of time, but every now and then I do that.
Yeah, but if it comes to the companies that you run and the employees that you have in that company, how often do you do group sessions or one-on-one sessions to pass wisdom on to them, if you like?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. With my team members, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I do obviously mentor my team, and that happens. We do weekly leadership. So with our leadership team, I do a weekly session. And that's just half an hour checking in and how is everyone going. And then also how we have set up the company, which I highly recommend for anyone to do if you have a team, is every week we have a 15-30-minute check-in individually with each team member. And then, of course, I can't often fit everyone in. So I would look after the leaders, and then the leaders would look after their team. And this way also the leaders learn to be leaders, which is is really cool too.
Yeah,
So
so
that
yeah.
awesome.
So what you're saying is you focus on people who are directly in your reporting line, quote unquote, and they're looking at people who are directly in their reporting line.
Exactly.
And then it goes down the line as you grow. Maybe you become a 10,000 people company. Probably the formula will work right down there as well.
Yeah, it works really well. And in these check-ins, they happen on Fridays. You can just really see what's working for them. It's not just business related. It's also personally. How are you going personally? Especially through this, when we first started going into this pandemic, people started to really freak out and be scared. And they saw, obviously, we have a lot of team members from all over the world, and some had parents in countries that are very affected by coronavirus, and so people really, there was a little bit of panic and fear, and so I had to definitely have way more contact with the team and just assure them and make sure they're staying calm and safe, and so that was increased very much throughout probably March, April 2020.
Before I get into your book, you said it is different talking to clients face-to-face versus online, which is the new, hopefully it's not the final new normal. I'm a salesman by profession, so I'd like to be with my customer all the time rather than just doing what we're doing right now. It's okay for a change or for a different setting for time or whatever the case be, or travel time saving. But eventually the face-to-face, I think, will live in the new normal as well. So, and hopefully it lives more than the digital one does. That's my personal bias. How much has this in the pandemic kind of affected? Do you feel when you're talking to the teams, when you're doing the normal Friday sessions, or they're doing their Friday sessions digitally, does the heart kind of feel the same way as it?
Great question, and nice to think about too. I feel that, again, in the beginning it took a little bit of time to settle into this new way of communicating, and definitely in the first few weeks I was, at the end of the day, I was over always being on Zoom. I'm like, just let me hug someone. and with the team also in the beginning was a bit like, oh, how are we doing this? We're all working from home. Are we okay? And setting up their workspaces at home. We already had a semi-virtual team, so it wasn't huge changes. And some team already worked from home some days, so it wasn't huge. But in the beginning was a bit like, oh, this is like getting used to it. But now, to be honest, I feel like it's very efficient, and I still feel very connected with the team. And also when we do our mentoring programs, we used to run them face to face. And then I thought, oh, I wonder how this is going to go we usually have about 12 businesses in the room working with each other and implementing marketing. And then we had to do this like this virtually. And I was wondering, oh, this might not work so well. But to be honest, it almost works better because there are no side conversations, because people are so focused. There's no chatter going on. And also with the Zoom breakout rooms, it's very good. That's one of my favorite features actually in Zoom when we run group sessions, is to put people into rooms and then they brainstorm. So in the beginning, it was a little bit of an adjustment and it felt a bit weird. The heart maybe was missing something. Now I love not having to drive everywhere. I don't use my car very much anymore, and I really like that. I save a lot of time not driving around.
Yeah, the emotional cost of covering distance on the road obviously is saved, and that becomes more productive when you're doing it more digitally. And I agree with the breakout room is a fantastic feature. I think everybody else is copying Zoom now. Which brings me to your book. What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, great question. And I knew that you were going to ask me a little bit about the book, so I went and grabbed a copy here. So how this came about is, it actually started a few years ago. This took me about 2 years to complete. It came out in May 2020. And I would say 5 or so years ago, I did a program for Mindvalley. Mindvalley is a personal development company in Asia, based in Asia, but they're global. And they flew me out to their head offices. They're a great company. And they asked me to produce a program with them on being bold and achieving the impossible. So it was a very inspirational and motivational. And so that was fun. I enjoyed it. I put the content together just for Mind Valley, it was exclusive. And then I thought, you know what, maybe one day I'll write a book on this. I really enjoy this topic. But then time passed and I forgot about it or put it somewhere else in my mind. And then 2 years ago, I started this motorbike journey we just spoke about before, where I had this best worst idea to ride a motorbike from Switzerland to Kazakhstan. And on this journey, I started this journey with a friend of mine who is super into motorbikes. He knows how to fix bikes. I don't know anything about it. Luckily, I said yes to him joining. And he said, he just kept observing how I engage with people and how I go about life. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, Franziska, do you never feel fear?" And I said, "Of course I feel fear. It's a natural human response, fear. Everyone has it. I definitely feel fear, but I just take action despite the fear." And then he said, "You should write on this." And I said, "Yeah, actually I remember." And so it started on this journey. I worked out the 13 principles that are in the book on this first leg of the journey.
I mean, I've gone through the 13 principles. If we start talking about that, it'll take 2-3 hours to go through all of them. If Franziska had to pick up the 3 most crucial of the 13, what would those be? And tell us about it.
Oh, okay. So this is a tough one because I do love them all, but I will go into this index here in my book quickly and look at which ones right now I feel are so important. I think the number one for right now is non-attachment. Given the current situation with so much uncertainty, we never know what's around the next corner, and a lot of people are really struggling with that. This is a thing, of course, some people are very much driven by certainty, and then some people, often entrepreneurial people, probably you also, definitely, I am very, very comfortable with uncertainty. And so right now that serves us really well, the being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so this principle of non-attachment, what it is all about is that we practice being okay with not having control over an outcome. And the theory is about that we can not control the circumstances. We can't really control what's going on in the economy. We can't control how fast this virus is spreading, other than being safe and doing our bit. We can't control if it's raining or if it's sunny. We can't control how our customers react, but we can always control how we respond to something. And so this principle is all about being in charge of how we respond and responding in a way that is useful and not worrying so much about circumstances we can't control. And it's about detaching from outcomes that we can't control, basically. So that's probably the first one. Then another one I would say is imperfection. And I'm sharing this today because I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs on the call, also probably a lot of young entrepreneurs, maybe even a lot of women in business. And I would say the principle is all about being okay with imperfection. And if we are okay with imperfection, we will be more courageous. Because what I see a lot with businesses is that they strive for this perfection, and often having to have something to be perfect will inhibit them to take action. So often this obsession with perfection is making someone not take action because they're waiting for the perfect moment and the perfect thing. And I highly encourage people to take imperfect action, to just take action and then change. Even if it's not the perfect action and you make mistakes, I love making mistakes because I know that I can learn from them. And I tell my team all the time, I say, if you don't make enough mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. So mistakes are a good thing. And the other thing quickly on that principle is there's obviously also this obsession with social media and looking at what other people are doing and comparing each other and going, oh my God, why is her life so perfect? And looking at competitive businesses and thinking that they've got everything perfect. They don't. On social media, people don't often publish the downs. So just stop looking sometimes even at what other people are doing. I actually don't look at I even have this belief, which might be delusional, that we don't even have competition because the way we do things is so different, and competition is good anyway. So I don't even look at what competitors are doing too much because we just do it our way. And so I definitely highly recommend doing that. And let's see what else we do for the third one. I spoke about kindness because kindness, I do think that is really important. So one of the principles that I share in the book is kindness and just embracing kindness. And one of my favorite mantras, again, I've shared this with my team, and I can give you some examples of how this works in practical terms. The mantra is always respond with kindness. And so I shared this mantra with my team a few years ago, and I said, hey, whenever you are faced with someone who is a bit rude or there's a challenge or someone is not being nice, remember, just repeat in your head, always respond with kindness. Because sometimes when we're hit by someone who is not so nice, it's easy to respond with aggression or to react. But we never know what this other person is going through. You know, even on the road, you see it when people are road raging or beeping or going nuts. We can either respond the same way, or we can just go, wait a second, respond with kindness. I don't know what this person is going through. And so a practical example is once we had an intern pick up the phone. She was from Norway and she had an accent. And so she couldn't understand the person who called. She couldn't understand the name. And so then this person was really grumpy about that and just, you know, said, hey, you know, that can't even like understand my name and la la la. Sounds just not nice. And so this girl remembered, always respond with kindness. So she was really kind. And I spoke to her after. I said, hey, just know that this is not a personal attack from this woman. This is just, we don't know what she's going through. So don't take this personally, because this could damage someone. And then I said, you could even send her a postcard and say, from Basic Bananas, and just say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm new here, and my English is maybe not so good at the moment, but I'm getting better, and I'm really sorry for not understanding your name on the phone. And she did that. And the response, of course, was amazing from that woman. She was like blown away.
Yeah, kindness has its own victory drivers, if you like. It melts the hardest of metals. So it can always melt the hardest of hearts as well. One of the things that I've when I go through your 13 principles, I go through the playbook. And there's a gentleman, I can't remember his name, I saw his video, done his own playbook. Two things I observed that come out very strongly, and I think they relate to when you describe the human being that you are. It's more driven by the heart than the mind. So you tend to believe, do you tend to believe that courage is a function that comes from the heart, or is something that comes from the cognitive background of the human, the brain? Which one is it?
That's a great question. And while I answer it, it's got a bit dark here because the sun went down. I might quickly turn on the light so you can actually see.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right, so this should be a bit better.
That's okay.
You can see me again. Great. Yes, so that's such a beautiful question, and it's also a beautiful observation. Yes, I'm definitely very much of a heart person, and that's got also one of the principles in the book I talk about is intuition, which is one of the best principles to tap into your courage. And intuition is all heart. It's about what we feel and how we feel, and tapping into this unconscious mind. It's still called a mind that is completely different to the mind that is conscious. So yes, to answer your question, I do believe that courage is tapped into if you are able to tap into your heart or your intuition more, because you will know when to say yes or no to something. I talk in the book about how courage is not about being reckless. Courage is not about doing something silly that can put your life into risk. Courage could be to face a difficult conversation for someone. For me, to be honest, a few even years ago, I was really not good at facing difficult conversations. So for me, that took courage. For someone else, it's like, oh, that's easy. And then for me, it might be easier to, I don't know, do some crazy stuff as long as I'm not risking my life. And then for someone else, that might take more courage. So it's definitely intuition will help you to guide to say yes or no to something, depending on the risk level also.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I observed, which we were with your partner, your friend, who were traveling on the adventure ride from Switzerland to Kazakhstan. You took a detour of going and seeing some temple, I think in Georgia or someplace. Yes. And he actually said, let's change your mind. So that was also courage to say, your courage was to say, we will change our minds at will. So one of the things that I noticed when you have entrepreneurs who come at a young age, or for that matter, even people with experience, what they call in this language called pivoting. If you are feeling you're about to fail, you have to pivot. If you can sense it earlier, it'll be better, or if it's late, it's fine. What would you recommend to entrepreneurs who come to a point that they must pivot? What would it be that you would ask them to look for before it actually happens, so that they know exactly there could be inevitable pivoting, but how do you take that fear out? People become shy to pivot or become fearful of pivot. They become shameful of pivoting. What will the world say? All these influences come on them. So how would you advise them to bring up the courage to boldly say, yeah, I pivot?
Yeah. And it's maybe also a language thing, I personally, the word pivot has been so used. If someone thinks that pivot means that they have to radically change, just use a different word. A word that I use with one of my dear friends, Niels, who is an innovation expert, and he pivots companies all the time. And when we get together, we always talk about reinvention or readjustments. It sounds a little bit softer. And what happens sometimes with companies is that, yeah, it's really cool. And it might be a bit less scary. So sometimes the company goes this way, where the product and the company is going this way, the customer is going this way, it's all going really good. But then suddenly the customer is going over here and the company keeps going this way without readjusting. So the product offering stays, but the customer meanwhile is over here because their needs have changed, or the economy has changed, or whatever has changed. And so you will see very quickly, if you pay attention to your customers, if they are going over here, you might want to pay attention to that, and you might want to go and see, why are they going over here? What do they need? And I've seen a lot of companies you see this in a lot of large companies too. They're so set in their ways that they just keep going this straight line, same every day. Meanwhile, their customers are over here. So then when more innovative companies come into the market, they lose a huge market share because they're not pivoting or readjusting. So those are the two things I would probably say. Maybe use a different language, readjust. And a pivot doesn't sometimes mean that you have to change the whole business model. It sometimes can mean that you adjust a few small things. And the third thing I would say is that as long as you have clarity on your core mission, on your core purpose, what you want to achieve, just have that in mind. But the way that you get there, it's okay. Don't worry, you can take a different way. There's a saying, I don't know it in English, but in Swiss, we have a saying that there are many ways that go to Rome. And it's the same in your business. You have your destination, which is your big vision, your mission, the impact you want to make. And there are many different ways to get you there in business.
There's a comma after that. There are many ways to go to Rome.
What is it?
It says after the comma, don't take the shortcut.
Don't take the
shortcut. The shortest path. Sometimes the devil sits on that path.
I agree. That's cool.
You have a reputation. In many of your interviews, you've been called or credited with the person who pushes the boundaries. Tell us, give us a couple examples of you getting into a spot where everything, like you said, you're going this way and the customer's going this way, and now you're going this way. You're in a great flight in cruise mode. How would you push the boundary to take it like 10 degrees more vertical? And that's a positive example. Give us an example of a challenge that you probably had a crash or almost a crash, and then you actually pulled it off.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say Basic Bananas has been a really great business to run. We've been very fortunate. Where I think we have been very strong, and people have come and tried to build what we have done and have failed. And we always have people. We don't mind having people in our programs that are marketing people. In fact, I love it because I think that if we can give them the knowledge, they can help more people. And some marketing people have sometimes thought they can now try and rip off what we have done so that they can do the same. And I don't mind that, because how we are pushing the boundaries and how it's very hard to copy what we're doing is the way we go about it in business. And if I look at a lot of business programs out there, a lot of them are quite on the conservative side, and they're all doing the same thing. They're all wearing the same clothes. It's all same, saying the same stuff. And how we're pushing it a little bit at Basic Analysis, just not buying into that stuff. And every now and then because sometimes when you have young talent and you tap into their genius. I've had people in my business, especially some film creatives, that have come in to do some film projects with us, and sometimes I just let them run wild and I say, hey, come up with something a bit crazy that is pushing it. And we've done some clips that were just weird, like just random stuff, making fun. One of them was making fun of me as the founder, leaving traces of tissues everywhere, because I do that. So the guy was like, totally, because he observed me, obviously he's one of the film guys years ago. He's like, I know how to find Franziska, I need to follow her traces of tissues. And so he was like portraying me like this little animal that is leaving little nuts everywhere. So that was like, it was just doing things differently. And also right now, and I think this is something for everyone to do, everyone who is listening and runs a business, is just being real, being honest about things, and not only publishing content that is super high polished. And I do a lot of selfie videos now, because I feel like people need to see also that, this is not always the perfect scenario with the perfect couch and the perfect camera and the perfect editing. Often right now I'm doing a lot of the selfie videos to share messages, and people really connect with that.
They do. Thank you. This has been great answers, all of them. Just to take you into your professional space now, tell us, what is the brand Alchemy? I know you're pretty impressed by, and so am I, by this gentleman whose name I can't pronounce, but his book I can, The Alchemist.
Oh, yes.
Is that where the name got inspired from? But anyway, even if it didn't, tell us about the brand Alchemy that you have a lot of passion for.
Yeah, so the Alchemist is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. When I was a teenager, I read that book, and I've been not obsessed, but I think the book has really impacted me somehow. I don't even remember the story, I just know it impacted me. And I've also been quite intrigued by alchemy, how you can create something from something else and how you can change a result. And just the metaphor of alchemy is brilliant. And so we've created, and I'm also very, very passionate about branding. I feel that branding is one of the most important things in a business to change hearts and minds. Using branding is the one tool that can help you change hearts and minds and move people to do something, whether it is to make an impact or work with you or whatever the action is. And so in our branding consultancy, we have created a framework that we called the brand Alchemy method. And I probably unconsciously was inspired by The Alchemist somewhere, I'm not sure. And that is a methodology that we use to walk companies through their brand strategy. So it starts with their brand purpose. I mentioned that before, like understanding why are you doing this? Then your brand principles, which are your guiding compass. And then we look at the brand positioning in the market. So through the brand identity, where do you fit in the market? Also through your differentiation. And then lastly, lastly, we look at your brand messages. So what are your brand promises? What are your stories that you can tell? Whether that is your founder story, if you have an interesting story, or it could be customer stories. And then lastly, and very importantly, is the brand engagement, which once you have your brand strategy, you need to activate this brand internally with your team if you have a team. And if you don't have a team, then you need to activate it through you and living this brand and portraying it in a way that you want to be seen as. And then also externally through the different touch points that you have in the market. So that's the brand alchemy method in a nutshell. We could talk about this for hours, and we probably will.
I can imagine. Yeah. I'm not letting go after this interview. I'm going to catch up with you otherwise. Let me ask you this. It's a fair question to ask, because now processes are less linear, the more iterative or iterative, whichever the pronunciation you want to pick. So if you look at those 5 steps that you described in a client engagement, practically, does it go serially or does it keep hopping back and forth?
When we do this strategy with a customer, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
No, we do actually start, it is quite linear. So we do start in the middle, which is the core. So before we go into any of the other brand elements, we definitely need to understand what is the purpose of this company and what are their principles. So it is actually quite linear in how it's built.
So if you're a startup entrepreneur, when they start, I mean, I mentor them as well. So there's the hook that comes up, the value proposition comes up. Then I have to differentiate between the corporate value proposition, then the marketing value proposition, the salesperson value proposition, and so on. So what would you recommend to an entrepreneur who is probably getting into growth stage, now has to have a branding campaign going on? What would your advice be to them in a nutshell, that how should they go about doing branding?
How to do a rebranding exercise?
Just a branding exercise. They have no brand right now. They just a name in an incubation facility or property in a garage.
Yeah, okay, great question. I would say I'll share a few questions with them that they can use. So the first question is, and I would follow this exact structure that we just summarized. So the first question I would ask is, why are you doing what you're doing? So why are you doing what you're doing? Also, why are your customers working with you? Why do they like you? And sometimes you just need to ask your customers, you just need to ask them, hey, why do you choose us? Why do you choose us? And that is part of your differentiation. They will tell you stuff that you go, oh, of course we do that. You might think that's not very unusual, but if they repeat something over and over again, it probably is something you should know about your business that is really cool. So why are you doing what you're doing? Why are your customers working with you? What do you believe in? So those are your principles now. What do you believe in? What do you never want to compromise on? Those are your guiding principles. And this is really important, because when you hire team members, you need to know this. You need to hire people that can display your principles, that can live your principles. And then the next question is, when it comes to now brand positioning, is this is a really good question. How do you want to be perceived? How do you want to be perceived? And here, when you answer this question, you describe your business like a person. I want to be perceived as innovative or cheeky or unconventional or courageous or conservative or modern. What is it? So pick a be perceived. And then the next one is, what makes you different? Which is the differentiation, what makes you different. And the next one is the messaging, which is, what are your promises to your customers? So think about that. That's the last bit. What are your promises to your customers? And when you answer this question, often we have a certain way of thinking. Some people are big picture, some people are more detail driven, some people are more skeptical, some people are more dreamy. And you will generally answer this question, especially the last one, in the way that you think. So if I was to write brand promises, so what do we promise to our customers? They would all be very big picture, fluffy, dreamy, in the cloud, because that's how I think. But that would leave out a huge percentage of our audience. So when you answer this question, what are your promises? You need to think about different personalities. So you need to write something for the big picture person. You need to write something that is very detailed. What are your promises in terms of how does exactly this product or service work? And also write one for the skeptic. So you need to have one that is talking more about the social proof, maybe how many people have worked with you, maybe some case studies, etc. So those are really the questions I would say. Go over these. If you're rebranding, or if you don't have a brand, if you've never thought about it, start with these few questions.
Thank you. That was deep, man. That was really deep. I mean, I thank you so much. I mean, that is something that I have a pitch training session coming up next week. I might just use it there. That was very, very deep. It's awesome. I mean, a fantastic. Just 2 questions I want to pick up from the audience that I have, because there is one coming from Hannah Beredoro, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, apologies if I'm not. Thank you so much for talking about your book. Okay, she's asking you for 3 top recommendations for an aspiring student entrepreneur.
Okay, so book recommendations. Okay, I'm the worst person to remember titles. I have a super fish memory, but there's definitely the one book that any new entrepreneur will be helpful for, and the book I believe is called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's an older book, but I believe that is a very good book that gives you the fundamentals of business and what you need to know. And I'm pretty sure it talks about, you know, difference between revenue, profit, and cost, and all sorts of things. So that's definitely a book. What other 2 books I'm thinking that are really good? There is the one book. It's more of a leadership book though, but there is a book by Simon Sinek, which a lot of people love, and I read it years ago, and it was a really good book. It's called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That's a really good book. He's also got another one called Leaders Eat Last, which I read, and that was really good too. And well, for marketing, for entry level marketing, so that's a really good book also. Of course, you know, I'm totally biased, but that is a good book to read if you are a little bit newish to marketing.
Yeah, except for the bananas for marketing, I think I would also strongly recommend those 3 books as well. They're all 3. They are 3 very, very great books. You're absolutely on the dot there. The second question that we have is from Inayat Hussain, and I can tell you she's from Pakistan. Hello, you spoke about women in the business world. How was your experience? How has been your experience as a woman in the field, and what advice do you have for other girls who want to enter the same field?
Yeah.
These are probably women in the millennial space, if you like.
It's a great question. I think I understand your question. It's about being a woman and entering the business world, and sometimes, you know, having a little bit of a male dominated world or industry. And, you know, in the entrepreneurial space, especially once you grow a business to a certain level, there are a lot less women, and I would love to see more women. I'm part of an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, and we have less than 20% of women in there. And I get asked this question a lot. Hey, you know, how do you feel as a woman in this space and being one of a few? And my advice is that just don't buy into that being a woman is a disadvantage. I think being a woman is, and this is a mindset thing, but I think that being a woman is an advantage. We are natural leaders. We are good at empathy. We're good at compassion. We're good at understanding people. So marketing comes more naturally to women than men, I believe, and I think comes more naturally. So how has being a woman impacted me? Being an entrepreneur, it's helped me, but it's helped me because I want to believe that. And the other thing also, the last thing I share on this is a lot of women, when they get to a certain level in the business, think that now, because they are often in a very male dominated space, they have to now act like men and they have to lead like men. And I feel that that is a big mistake. I feel that it doesn't matter where we are and how big our businesses are. I feel that when women stay feminine and they lead like a woman, it's good. So don't buy into the now you have to act, talk and walk and dress like a man. No, use your feminine advantages, which you have a lot of. So that's what I would say.
I will not deny you despite being a man on that one. I fully support that statement for 2 reasons, because that is what the practice should be. Every gender was made for a purpose. And the second reason, of course, is I only have a 25% vote in my family with a wife and 2 daughters. So I won't dare deny it on that count, definitely. Franziska, it has been great having you on board. It's about time for us to call it a close. If there's anything closing remarks you want to say before I close, you're more than welcome to visit Pakistan. Be our guest.
Oh, I'd love to come to Pakistan. I would definitely love to ride my motorbike through your country. I've seen
Absolutely
pictures that make me want to come right now, which I can't, but I will be there 100%, and I will reach out for sure. And any closing words is just be courageous to do your thing and do your thing, and do it in a way that is unique to you. And you might get a lot of advice from people. I've shared advice today. Always check it with yourself first. Does this feel like the right thing to do for you? If something doesn't feel right for you, don't do it. Do it your way. And it takes courage to do that, but I feel like you have the courage to do it. So just do it and take imperfect action. It's better to take imperfect action than to take no action at all. And lastly, be okay with failure, because failure is really cool, because failure is teaching you how to do things differently.
Thank you so much. Thoroughly enjoyed every single moment of it, and look forward to keeping in touch with you and catching up with you more.